We have a guest who's joining us in the studio. He's a journalist. He's from Uganda. He's a producer of current affairs at Vision Group. His name is Paul Busharizi. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning.
Welcome to Kenya's Biggest Conversation.
Thank you.
Karibu sana to Nairobi. You've been here for a couple of days.
Yes, about a week or so.
Doing one or two things.
Yeah, well, training journalists on illicit financial flows.
Illicit financial flows.
No. The way you put it.
How to recognize, not how to do it. No. I have no expertise in how to do it, but I can recognize it somehow. Yeah, for reporting purposes. Yes. Okay.
For reporting purposes. Karibu sana. Tell us about Vision Group, where you work in Uganda. What do you do?
It's I'm embarrassed to say it in this magnificent place, but it's our biggest media house in Uganda. Newspapers, TV, radio, online, that kind of business. Been in operation now for about 28 years, 27 years. And yes, it's trying to hold fort in an increasingly dangerous media environment.
What's increasingly dangerous? What does that mean?
I mean, legacy media is, we like to think we're hanging on, but we're on our way out. Yeah. We're no longer the gatekeepers of what is considered news and relevant. People are now making their own choices on social media, what is relevant, and I think we are not quite keeping up with them, which is a hard order. I mean, a tough order because it's kind of democratized. Those days you decide. Today, I think the big news is a demonstration here, but guys have decided that the news is somebody's funny video that has come out, so you're totally off the thing, and it's showing the numbers. I don't know whether you feel it here,
so legacy media is basically just off the pulse many times of the majority,
more times than we like to think
and we care to admit.
Sad, very sad, but we're hanging there.
It's true, and we have to keep having these conversations and seeing how to act and move into the next one. So you've also authored a book, and we've been talking about that book, The House That Museveni Built.
Yes.
The House That Museveni Built. What's this book about?
Well, so I've been a columnist at the New Vision, which is part of the Vision Group, for at least maybe 20 years. And in that time, you're trying to put context to events that are happening, during the week. So the idea was that, so then those columns, I compile them into a blog. So in 2021, I hit the 1,000th blog. So I thought, there must be a way to commemorate this. And then someone said, why don't you write a book? And then I thought about all the pain of writing a book. And then someone said, no, but you can do it, an e-book. Thought that was interesting. So I went on Amazon, and, they have their step-by-step thing. So the challenge was, what would the book be about? And I thought, this book has been about Uganda. And the one constant factor, obviously, over those times has been President Yoweri Museveni. And for better or for worse, whatever is happening now, whatever has happened in the last so many 20 years, he's had a significant role to play, if not a major role. So I thought, the house that Museveni built, kind of a play on the nursery rhyme, I think, the house that Jack built. And so then I tried to get a few columns that speak to that theme, that this is the house that Museveni built. So it's broken into 4 parts. There's the politics, basically how the NRM come into power, how they consolidate power, and how they continue to perpetuate themselves down the years. There's geopolitics, a bit mention of how they've, through their own, let's say Museveni's force of will or something, has kind of orchestrated things in the region. And then economics, which is in many ways is their biggest strength, how they have totally turned us around from being a basket case to, something to talk about. And then finally, which is a favorite part of me for me in the book, is what we have become as a result. So it's then a few, articles commentaries about the things that have happened. That you looked at in a different context might sound crazy, but this is now what we've become. We're a bit We're very sanctimonious.
As a people, as a country?
As a people, we're very sanctimonious, but we're very corrupt at the same time. We are very... we try to be serious, but we will not lose an opportunity to party. Are
you saying you cannot party and be serious at the same time?
Not the way we do it. Not the way we do it in Uganda. You have to choose. You have to make a choice.
When you're partying, you're not serious.
Yeah.
But the level of partying that is being alluded to here sounds like
serious partying.
Yeah. I think when you say serious in that context, you're describing, the intensity of the partying, but not that, we're taking ourselves very seriously. And so so at the end of the book, basically, I'm thinking that this is the people we now have become. We're a bit flighty, we're a bit short attention spanned people, we are a bit... but we're very hard. We're very hard workers, not necessarily working smart. We like to show activity, even if it's not delivering. So we've come. It's an attempt without saying what we are to show what we've kind of become.
It was necessary then, I guess, for you to bring out a lot of the history in terms of what happened, struggle towards the NRM and all of those intrigues. Was it necessary to look at that history to arrive at that conclusion, to say that, this is what Ugandans are, governance and otherwise, and all of this is a sum total of these experiences, historically and present?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just briefly, we gained independence in 1962, although there's a lot of history before then, of course. We gained independence in 1962. By 1971, we'd got our first coup, although some people say 1966 was our first coup because the prime minister overthrew the president at the time. 1971, we get Idi Amin, and for 8 years, we just go into the real dark ages, real regression in very many ways. And one of the things actually that come out of the Amin era is because there was so much terror and general terror. We began to live for the day. And people who are older than me tell me that it was a very serious thing to say goodbye to somebody in the morning when they're going to work, because you never know.
Wow.
They might not come back. It was a real thing.
Actually mean it when you say
you don't
goodbye.
just take off and say, I forgot to say bye to that person. No, it was really real. So we began to become really day-to-day livers. We live day-to-day, hand-to-mouth, and that kind of stuff. So then, it gets thrown out, and then for another, that's about 1979. Then for another 6 years, we have a bit of stability, but it's chaotic because part of the reason is, of course, the NRM is in the bush causing chaos. And then in 86, then Museveni comes, and him and his NRM, understand that, this business of sharing power with people just doesn't work. We just have to subdue everyone, and we run this joint. So, but it all comes out of that history. Because President Museveni, even he could have gone to Makerere University, but he goes to Dar es Salaam University. And Dar es Salaam University at the time was a hotbed of Pan-Africanism and all that kind of business. And in fact, his thesis in his undergrad year was something to do with the justification of violence in politics or something like that. So you can see, it's all context. It all comes. So it comes to 1986, and the president in NRM is met with this reality. First of all, when you're in the opposition, you think you can fix everything. Then you sit there and you realize, things are really tight. So they came in. People say they had Marxist leanings, but when you read the stuff. They were young guys. Of course, when you're younger, you want to tend towards that kind of political ideology. But they were realists, and they realized that these things of socialism, they might not work in our circumstance. We need to generate the wealth to distribute. You can't distribute poverty. You can, but it's very painful.
Yeah.
And so then that's how we get into the World Bank and the IMF, and the economy then is kind of picked up. And so you can see the context. We come from a place of pain, and we have to make our own decisions. We have to make our own allies. We have to U-turn on certain things we believe, and then we come to this point.
If you look at the history of Uganda, and you look at how the country evolved to the point where it was the property of the British, you look at the kingdoms that Uganda had, and you look at just the cultural wealth of the country. You look at Milton Obote coming in as president, there's always this question that as Africans we ask ourselves, because what you've described of Uganda is a mirror of what has happened on this continent from one place to the other.
Just variations of the same thing.
Yes. Well, you have to ask, at what point, because now this is an African question, not a Ugandan question, not Kenyan. At what point did the rain start beating us?
At what point did they remove the umbrella?
Yes.
Because I think the rain was always there.
There was always rain.
I love that. At what point did they remove the umbrella?
Did we even know there was an umbrella?
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting question. You can talk about it till the cows come home.
Yes.
But it's not in this book, I think. But I've written a commentary before that one of the reasons we got independence is not because we had forced the Muzungu to a point where he says, you guys, what happened? The British basically were broke after the Second World War. And they just needed to shed all these things.
Excess fat.
Yeah, and keep management to a bare minimum. So, I mean, there's a book I've just finished reading called The Legacy of Violence. I think you probably know about it. It's a sequel to a book called, I think, The Kenyan Gulag. And the person basically says that in 1945, when they came out of the war, they were dire straits. There were people like Winston Churchill thought that this kingdom empire will go on until it will never end. But the economic reality was, so we're not ready. I mean, in Uganda, for example, they tell me, or I read a World Bank report, we had 300 A-level students. A-level, Kenyans might not know A-level now, because they dropped it in 1985. But A-level is after the 4 years of high school, so the 2 years. So if you have 300 guys there, that means how many will go to university?
Yep.
Maybe what? Less than 100? So you can imagine at independence, you had less than 100 guys going to university. I mean, you had no capacity. It was nice to say we were independent, but we were just nowhere. We were nowhere. And I think that was part of the problem. We just had no capacity.
So it came too soon.
It came too soon.
There are arguments that favor what you've just said, but then if I go further south and look at a country like Botswana, and in that same period, and you compare it with Uganda had capacity.
Well, I think the beauty of Botswana also is that, if I'm not wrong, they're like more or less one group.
Yes.
And they had a king,
one ethnic group.
One ethnic group, and they had a centralized kingdom. They had a kingdom structure.
They did.
Which was already holding them together. Now, for the rest of us, I don't know, Kenya, 45 tribes, Uganda, we have another 40-something, God knows. You just knew that it was going to be a problem. These guys were already under centralized authority. I mean, even in Uganda, we have a kingdom like Buganda, which was already a centralized authority. And when the British come and they decide, you know what, let's not fix what ain't broke. And they use the kingdoms as agents of their own thing. But because they found this structure. So I imagine, in my mind, Botswana, that's its biggest thing.
It's very true.
Also, the advantage of minimalist population in terms of numbers.
It comes into numbers, but then we have a country that neighbors us immediately, who you could say have similar traits. Somalia, same language, but they have clans.
But they didn't have a centralized power.
It depends on how far back in history you go to. Yes, and it depends on who colonized them and their system of colonization. The reason why I'm asking these questions is because it bothers me. There's always the possibility that the chaos we think we've left behind can visit us again.
No doubt.
So I have to ask the question: when did it start raining? When did they remove the umbrella? Because if this question isn't responded to or understood adequately, the likelihood of returning back to that chaos is even greater, and it will be worse because in this information age, can you imagine how quickly information will spread and how quickly it can be taken up and how quickly a problem can actually be escalated?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is my own, not my own thinking, but what I think is that some people will not be happy with this, is that the problem with us is that we are too many poor people. And poor people have very little interest. An interesting story was told of Singapore. When Lee Kuan Yew wanted to improve their lot, so he built them flats and gave them ownership and found a way to give them ownership. You pay, but it's yours. You'll pay over whatever period is yours. He said the quality of demonstrations changed. because the man knows my friend, I can't throw, literally, I cannot throw a stone at that window when I know I have a window the other side. And that at a demonstration, people would pick up their motorbikes from downstairs and carry them up before they go to demonstrate. So I think the quality of the poverty among us is a ticking time bomb. And that's why the danger, I think, that we can always regress.
But if you look at all societies, I mean, all societies had very poor people at some point. But then systems established, well, they were established. In fact, in many of these societies, somebody else came and conquered them and created a system for them and organized people. And then the people were so organized that they actually overthrew the guy who came and set up the system and started running the system. There was a moment of chaos, but over time, they found a way to flow. Because it's the same thing. We, before the colonialists came, we had our own chaos, raiding each other. This is a normal thing. You go there, you raid them, you take their women, you take their children, you take their cows.
It's interesting you started with women.
Yeah.
Because that's what used to happen. It's the women and the children, and the animals. And then the colonialist comes and establishes this other system that then does away with our usual thing of raiding and creates this other system. And now we gain independence and we don't go back to our old thing. We adopt this system. I think we are getting to a place where we are now getting to understand this system and working with that system. So the chaos that City is talking about, in those years of the 60s, the first decade of independence in Africa, and the coup d'etats and all, it's basically people just trying to utilize a system they didn't understand. Now we've seen a reduction of coups. Well, there are a couple of countries, of course. But then we've seen a reduction of coups. We've seen Museveni staying in office for this long. And there's nobody in the bush. Well, there has been a guy in the bush, but that guy...
We don't know.
We don't know which bush.
Yeah.
But at least there's a semblance of now a system. There's always that fear of what happens after Museveni. Well, there's a likelihood of a return.
Some of these things are also a bit, can you call it cosmetic? So when you talk about poverty, those countries which have survived, without going to chaos or have passed that chaotic, because they have a critical mass of middle class and upper class who hold this system down. Essentially, we say, guys, we can't go down this route. Let's resolve our issues. That's where democracy comes in. Okay, we disagree. You have a party that side, I have a party this side. We talk over tea. And sometimes we conspire against the masses. Yeah. But anyway, we keep this thing afloat. So the question for us is, have we reached that critical mass of people that can hold? Because even in the more advanced economies, the poor are more than the rich or the middle class. There's no place, I think, where that pyramid is inverted. So it's just about, have we built that critical mass of people who have a real interest in our countries? If you have your land and your house there, it's beyond having these things. You have a real interest, not just going and singing national anthems and stuff.
Yeah.
But if you don't have, then your context, the way you operate changes. And we have a critical mass of those people, and that's probably the challenge.
Yeah.
The problem with that, of course, is that when you create those kind of people, they become a problem to the people in power. Thinking too much, making too much noise, and so the people in power, they're between a rock and hard place. We want stability, so we need to grow these guys, but we want to stay here, so it's better for us if these other poor guys are more. But anyway.
But Paul, when you talk of poverty, what are we talking of? Because it's material economic poverty, or is it a poverty of spirit? I'm going to explain why I'm asking this question. The thing that colonization did, the remarkable thing that it did, it left us disenfranchised. When your way of life is interfered with as conclusively as the colonialists did, the very soul of your existence is more or less moved away. So the biggest battle you're fighting is coping with this new ethos that you've been introduced to, and trying to marry it with something that you have scant memory of. Another intervening years, it's actually even not there. We had our problems, yes, but there was an understanding as to how one went about their lives on a daily basis. There was a clear understanding. One may not think so, no. but there was. Now, I am looking at Yoweri Museveni, the president of Uganda. When you Google search it and look at Wikipedia, there is no positive adjective that is used to describe his rule. It's either despotic or it's a dictatorship. And yet, you cannot deny that his term in power has brought about stability to the country. You can talk around it. You can talk about people who've been caned, beaten, sent to jail arbitrarily. You can say what you like. But large picture. Now, what I'd like to know about the larger picture is, would you say that the lives of the common man in Uganda has improved significantly during this rule?
I think I think what anyone who watches Uganda seriously agrees upon is that there's been economic growth. The challenge is that economic growth has not been shared. Can call it equitably. Like everyone hasn't had a fair thing. Just a simple statistic: 70%, up to 70% of our people derive a livelihood from the land, but agriculture accounts for only 26% of GDP. Just those numbers just tell you that there are some guys who are they've missed out on the action. And that's where the challenge is. This growth which we have, which is indisputable, has not been equitably spread out. And it's really a function, obviously, of it's known that the private sector creates a growth and the government should be the one which distributes. Now, if there's a failure in distribution, it's a failure of the government. It's not a failure of the private sector. Private sector, we did our job. We grew we gave you the pie. We created the pie. Now you're distributing, you fail to distribute the thing. That being said, I mean, how much is there to distribute? We have a budget now, I think it's going to about 50 trillion Uganda shillings, which would mean in a population of 50 million Ugandans, that's about 1 million shillings every Ugandan, which is about $300 per Uganda. That's what the government has budgeted for Uganda. And we keep joking at home that if I give you $300 on January 1st and tell you see me again on January 1st next year, you'll be like, boss, wait, where are you going? Add money here. Yeah? So the resources already, I think we came from such a low base that even now when we seem to have shown some progress, we're really still nowhere. We're just So I think that's been the challenge has been that we've been struggling so hard to grow. And then government, of course, as is the case almost everywhere, I think, on this continent, is dysfunctional and in its inability to even use the little we have to maximize the gain. So coming to 37 years of President Museveni, those will be in my mind, those are the two major issues. That you grew the economy, thank you very much, but your dysfunctionality in your government has failed to see. I mean, the urban people of Kampala, they call it urban elite, we are having the time of our lives, man.
Things are good.
Things are good, man. We compared to where we were in 1986, when we had no water and we had no power and we had no basic things like soap and salt. Now, oh man. The other time, a few years ago, guys went on demonstration, and the demonstration was that the sugar prices have increased. We were laughing. We were saying, 1986, you're talking about sugar prices increasing. There's no sugar. What are you talking about? Sugar prices increasing. So the urban elite have had the time of their lives. We are good. We are good. But again, is that a critical mass? And that's where the challenge comes. Yeah, you small little pin at the top of the pyramid there, you're having a blast. These guys down here are saying. And people like to say in Uganda, oh man, it's a tribal thing. And I tell guys, listen, that guy who is there grinding his teeth, and life is beating him down. The rain is torrential on him. When you pass in your car, he doesn't know what tribe you are. You are the tribe of the people who are doing this to us.
That's the tribe.
Yeah. It's you and us.
Versus us. Let's take a break, City.
Okay.
And then we continue. It's 27 minutes to 10. Paul Busharizi is our guest this morning. He's a journalist. He's a producer of current affairs at Vision Group, one of Uganda's leading media outlets.
Not one of Uganda's leading media.
Okay.
I was getting you there.
Yes.
He has also authored a book. It's called The House That Museveni Built, and that's what we're discussing this morning. KRA Spice. Paul Busharizi. a journalist from Uganda, producer of current affairs at Vision Group, and also who has authored the book, The House That Museveni Built. City interrupted a question that you were asking, Paul.
It's the question I was going to ask is, you see, whenever one talks about Uganda, it is impossible to talk about Uganda and not talk about Yoweri Museveni. Kizza Besigye will feature the conversation. Bobby Wine has started featuring recently. But a lot of the activities that you hear from these two individuals I mentioned who are not Museveni, it happens in Kampala. So the question I wanted to ask Paul was, Paul, if I look at President Museveni, I have to ask the question, his biggest power base, voter base, is it in the urban areas or is it in the rural areas?
No, it's in the rural areas.
And where do the majority of the Ugandans live?
We have a 22% urbanization rate, so you can 78% of the pool is outside.
Is outside. And that's where the bulk of his support is.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I tell guys that politics is not a popularity contest. It's not about... it's what can you do for me? I might not like you, but show me. And you might say things and stuff, but being in power for 37 years, but he's not there because people have said, let's just leave him to be there. People have actively tried to get him off the seat. I hear narratives where they say, the man has been there for 37 years, as if no one is trying to get him off the seat, from within and from without. Yeah. So people just make a pragmatic decision. What can this guy do for me? You look at the alternative and you say, but really, you have your doubt to say, well, I don't think.
Yeah.
So we should. It's not as if President Museveni came down the road, there would be people putting down their clocks on the road for him to ride over.
Right.
That's not how it is. It's just a pragmatic decision to say who does what for me.
Yeah. Part of this, you talk about the house that Museveni built, and a group that occupied one of the rooms of this house, according to what you've written, is women. And I just wanted to, this is a part of that you've dedicated to that, and just reading some of the things that you put in here. You said, from the times of the Bush War, the nature of the war made it impossible to ignore the women's contribution and hence rig politics to ensure that they got a place at the table. In the time of war, everybody, and I like because you split everybody. Everybody counted. You had to be in a place of struggle. So women were finding themselves in the rebel ranks. If they were not able to make themselves useful, they were dead weight. Right? So the system of struggle, more or less forced women into positions of leadership. And as serendipity would have it, they ended up doing a good job. Yeah. And it turns out that if you look on the scale of things, then Uganda is probably one of the most progressive countries on the continent today in terms of the inclusion of women in its leadership. And you say that looking at 2026, then cabinet would have sealed the presidential election with the inclusion of women. And women are not going to take a back seat anymore. Is this seen by far and wide that, it is obvious the contribution that women have made to governance and leadership in Uganda, even in Yoweri Museveni's administration, his wife being, front and center as well?
Well, first of all, and I like that you picked up on the genesis, that when you're in the bush, when you're a guerrilla, everything has to work. You can't be there chilling in the corner and everyone is doing things. Everyone has to be involved in the thing. So the nature of the struggle was that you're drawing your forces or your people or fighting people from the public, the general public. But sometimes, as has been described in other places, when you come under attack, you have to move with whole populations. Yeah. Now, you can't say, okay, women, you stay, children stay, so we're going with the men only. No, you can't do that. So then in that process, the women find they have to operate. As I said, you can't have dead weight. So when the NRM comes out of the bush, it understands immediately that, look, it can't say, okay, thank you, ladies, you can go back home now. Yeah. No, it understands that these people are useful even in themselves. Well, they can go back home and start families, but we still need them in the thing. And it's out of that realization, which was really, if you think about it, a really politically brilliant thing. You bring in 51% of the population. Yeah. Now, 37 years down the line, there are some things women just take for granted that, why not? Why can't I be in it? in other places you might find women saying, linking off to the side and saying, that's the man's place. But in Uganda, a woman stands up and says, I'm here. And no one is looking at her like, Shah, who are you? No, people are like, oh yeah, okay, she's also here. Let's take that into consideration. And that's a big thing psychologically for everybody, by the way. So I mean, in the last 3 years, more women have graduated from Makerere undergrad than men. It's an amazing statistic people are not paying attention to.
3 years.
Despite the fact that, at the beginning of their classes or their cohorts, the men are more. But women come out the other side.
Stay in power.
And we have all sorts of theories for that, one of which was in around 1990, the government gave women 1.5 points in addition to their A-level marks to get into university. And that those ladies, those women in 1990 who got those marks are the mothers of the women now.
Right.
So there's a case for affirmative action.
The suggestion is that, those days, if the resources become short and it's time to decide, you say the guy goes and the woman, you relax. But the mother now who's been through the education says, no, my daughter also has to go. And I have the means and I have the will to make it happen. So maybe that's what's happening. And it's, some of these things, the movements take a long time to recognize. And by the time they gather traction, you can't remember what caused it at the beginning. But yeah, that's true. And we take it for granted now. We don't understand probably where it came from. We think everybody should be like this. When we go to other countries, we're shocked. We're like,
how come there are no women?
Especially our women, by the way. They go for conferences, workshops abroad. They're like, what's going on here? Why aren't people speaking up?
Yeah, because it's interesting, because you talk about the chagrin with which, people in the United States were shocked. Finally, first woman vice president, and Ugandans will be like,
what's that about? What's a big deal? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so there's been a mind shift over, obviously, the last 30 years about women's importance in things. Of course, women will always, men will always try to maintain the status quo, but it's becoming harder and harder to, because you have to keep conceding an inch, and you look back and say, again, this guy's a mile. Why don't you try? And you try to take it back, and they're like, hey, wait. Stay on that side, please. We're coming. Yeah, so the struggle is still there for women. I'm sure you talk to women in Uganda, they'll tell you the struggle is still there. But I think, some momentum has been created.
What do you say about the 2026 and the next election and the role that you see women playing in it? What exactly do you mean, and what do you see?
No, I mean, okay, so the way the women are in Uganda's political structure, that at every district level they have a seat, a dedicated seat. Every level of government, so that goes all the way from parish, county, district. There's a dedicated place for everyone. Even in parliament, they have dedicated. There's a district woman and stuff. So, if you think about it from a political point of view, you've actually co-opted 52% of the 51% of the population. Just by mere fact, they say if we go that direction, we have a chance. Of course, unfortunately, if you're in the opposition, you really can't make that case because you're small resources. These guys have showed you. We do it. So you can imagine women's bias would be more towards the NRM than anyone else, just by mere fact that we see there is a chance.
This is where
there.
they have
And again, not because we like you, but we see there's space
what
here
you
for
do
us.
for us.
What are you going to do for us?
You delve into a bit of Kenyan politics. Sorry, CT.
It's all right.
And another chapter, which was very interesting, that you called Uganda stirs up Kenyan politics. Rather, Ugandan sugar stirs up Kenyan politics. I mean, the length and breadth of it essentially being that, look, Kenya had a bit of an issue. You started off, interestingly, with a line, perennial nearly man of Kenyan politics, Raila Odinga, kicking up a storm in the sugar-growing regions of Western Kenya, and talking about the...
and that was in 2015.
That was in 2015, you said that, yeah. And you said that, Kenya is not able to keep up with the demand. First of all, Kenyan sugar is extremely expensive. But at the same time, Kenya is having a problem taking sugar from Uganda. I mean, you went on, and then at the end you said, the writing is on the wall for the Kenyan sugar industry. Either they restructure it completely, including uprooting the sugar barons in whose interest the status quo works, or let the industry die with no help from Uganda.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it's a long story. I mean, and we're even beginning to suffer the same in Uganda. But, a lot of those industries in Western Kenya were set up or benefited from Uganda's inadequacies. And one of them is the sugar industry on that side. And once Uganda, begins to become independent, self-sufficient in sugar, then things begin to happen around Western Uganda and Mumias and the sugar. And if you're not efficient, then trouble catches up with you. Previously, you could do what you want. After all, they'll buy. What's the problem?
There's markets.
Yeah, what's the problem? But then, obviously, you guys know better than we do that there's an interest group that is also interested in killing those industries so they can import the sugar.
Oh, yeah.
Now, for Dinga, what I read in 2015 was that he probably worked out that these numbers who are going to be disenfranchised by the importers are a good base to have. So let's shut out the Ugandans so that we give these guys a chance. And when the election are coming, and we shall sort things properly.
That didn't happen.
I keep telling guys that there are laws of economics. They're like gravity. To take an airline off the ground, a plane off the ground, takes a lot of energy, a lot of power, and all that, and keep it in the air. You can only do that temporarily. And when the power and energy and the resources, you come down. Yeah. So in economics, when you try to artificially create situations, it takes energy, and then at some point you're going to have to say, "Oh, guys, okay,
You'll run out.
see you guys." So I see it that, Uganda, we're having our problems now in the sugar industry, but I see it that, maybe Western Kenya needs to think less about sugar and do other things and stuff. And especially since Odinga didn't win in 2022, he postponed the reckoning. I don't know whether it's postponing the reckoning, but, you need to really think seriously about just letting it go.
I come from that region and I don't grow sugar. I used to.
The economics decided.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. You might as well just let your neighbor's cows graze on your land. It makes far more sense, and it brings about good neighborliness.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask this question.
Cheaper.
There's one of the things that President Museveni has done. It's almost unparalleled on the planet. The number of advisors he has.
Yes.
Okay.
How many does he have currently?
141, I think. Or are there more?
I don't know.
Okay. Last time I counted was 141.
What?
How many of them are women?
I don't know. There must be a significant number of women.
You see, I look at that system that he has created. Politically speaking, it's a stroke of genius. Politically speaking, I'm careful with my words here, because if you have people whom you've worked with, either you were in the bush, whatever the history is, some don't get elected, some don't quite, something happens. But essentially you're saying there's a place for you.
Yes. He said it before. There are many rooms in my father's house. Absolutely.
So you need not feel you've been disenfranchised. You'll be given something. You'll have an office, an income, probably a vehicle and a driver. Now, why I'm saying is politically astute. The disgruntlement that often follows just the political goings-ons, it's minimized. It's not eliminated, but it's minimized. Because usually, if I look at political positions within this continent, well, I guess elsewhere, but the continent, the people who tend to give you the biggest problem are people you've worked with closely.
Yeah, and are not in the loop.
Yes, because when they move out, they become very, very, very erstwhile enemies. They're people who can give you a lot of problems because they know you, they understand you, and they also understand the system.
Yeah.
Now, the question, succession. There has to be a succession plan.
Well, I tell people that the succession plan is already there. According to the constitution of Uganda, the vice president takes over from the president. And I think it's again a political move to be as if this is inconsequential. But if we were to say, guys, we want to build institutions, who is the next president of Uganda? What is the process of the next president? It's already in the books. It's all in there. Now, I can imagine it playing very well into Museveni's favor if you guys ignore this, because then I become the guy who decides.
Yes.
Yeah? And if I was the one, I also wouldn't dissuade you from that line of thinking, because it makes me relevant. But the truth is, the process is already the process is in place. I mean, if you're to be clinical,
That's in emergency succession.
But even the party, even let's assume the NRM party is the dominant party. Even within that party, there is a process of who takes over, how do you do it. It's all
So
written
the next
down.
candidate is basically like the deputy.
In theory,
President.
yeah, or who they decide will be.
Okay.
And there's a process of decision making, which again we don't want to overplay because then it might take away from me. But the point for me, the whole idea, and for me, this book was like a marker that I'm saying I'm putting this down now.
Yeah,
but the real book is coming later because the real book will come when all these kind of things are resolved. And for me, again, talk about 37 years and advisors, and you're saying political astuteness and stuff. One of our biggest problems, I think, in Uganda is that Museveni has made this thing look so simple. That this thing, who even me can be president? That's one of our biggest problems. And it's he has managed. He understands. In my mind, he understands power, how to get it, of course, and how to retain it. And he's not a textbook guy. He understands. He looks at his environment. There might be textbooks on power, political science. I don't know, Sijunini, but he looks around and he says, "Okay, how do I fit this thing?" And he's very pragmatic about these things. He is almost amoral. He's not going to be there saying, "What will people think about me?" If I do-" No. Guys, like, man,
We're doing this.
we're doing this. First of all, of course, as a leader, a politician, you have to believe you're the one. You're the chosen one. You're the one who's taking people to the promised land. If you don't believe that, you're not going to get into power. It will be I don't know, miracle. What's a miracle? So you've got to believe. So he believes he's the one. Yeah. And you have not dissuaded him over the last 37 or how many years. You have not.
Surely.
In fact, severally I said, you guys, I'm the one who's always right. All of you guys, you're always wrong and wrong and wrong. Every time comes, when time
You still
passes,
vote me.
with the passing of time, I'm proven right. I'm proven right. So he says, okay, fine, I'm the one. He says, this is Uganda. This is not Kenya. This is not UK. This is not America. This is not Russia. This is Uganda. How do I maneuver in this context?
Yes.
The textbooks might say what they want to say. In this context, how do I maneuver? And he's shown astuteness over 37 years. And as I said, it makes it look simple because when people say he's been in power for 37 years, people, especially from the outside, think we have let him be in power. This guy is fending off all sorts of, forgive my French, from all over the place, from outside, from inside, from within his party, from his family, from he's juggling all these balls.
He's surviving it. He is not just staying in power.
And one of the things, people don't like to, and I feel bad for them because they need to recognize this. When we're here dealing with things of June 2023, the guy is in June 2030. So by the time you catch up with him, he's gone. He's long gone. And people are refusing to recognize that, or they don't want to acknowledge it, or I don't know what they want. But and if you have a long-term player against a short-term player, chances are the long-term player is going to come through.
It's the one that's going to emerge victorious. Paul,
love
thank
him
you
or
very
hate him,
much.
that's how it works.
Thank you for coming today, Paul, and thank you also for discussing this book with us.
It's been great. It's been great. You haven't said the book is available on Amazon for the Kenyan audiences, of course, and Mahiri Books, I think, deliver.
Mahiri Books, they deliver, and you can go to Amazon. The House That Museveni Built by Paul Busharizi. Thank you for tuning in to Kenya's biggest conversation. Have a lovely day. See you tomorrow. It's 10 a.m.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.